Prediction models perform so much better when you include the behavior, so rumination or activity in that case. It's really important to look at behavior and not just production if you're trying to, use precision technology to intervene sooner and maybe treat a cow more preventatively as opposed to once it's, too late.
Welcome to Rumination, the podcast that offers practical solutions to the challenges of our industry. Hi, I'm Chris Gwynn, and today I am honored to have Dr. Meagan King join us. Meagan is an associate professor in the Department of Animal Science at the University of Manitoba in Manitoba, Canada, where she is teaching animal physiology and animal welfare. And she's been there since January 2021. Prior to moving to Manitoba, Dr. King had been working and researching at the University of Guelph, publishing, as you may know, several papers related to the use of precision technology to monitor and predict animal health and well-being, as well as she's done some collaborative work on the negative impact on lameness on cow performance. So, Dr. King, it's a real pleasure to have you visit with us today on Rumination.
Really happy to be here. Thanks, Chris.
Well, thank you. So, Dr. King, you've been at the University of Manitoba for about a year.
Yes.
And so the audience would be interested to know what you've been up to. What are your research interests and projects that you have in mind?
Yeah, it's been an interesting year. It's all been remote, but I've been teaching a bit, applying for a lot of grants, having a fair bit rejected. But I'm actually getting a lot of really good feedback on dairy farmer mental health and well-being project that I have planned. So working with, different provinces and getting producer feedback on how can I assess what stresses them out, what is, influencing their mental health, their physical health, how's that related to, farm management, do you have a tie stall, free stall? And I also want to look at connections to cow health because obviously everything on the farm is connected.
So when things aren't going so well in the barn, that has certainly a negative impact on how we feel going to the barn, I imagine.
Yeah, or maybe it goes the other way too, right? Like we don't perform our best when we're stressed out, so it's harder to get all your chores done efficiently, right?
No, absolutely, and how that also impacts labor on larger operations with a lot of labor and how they're doing. So that's really interesting topics, and sounds like we're going to have to circle back
Sorry,
in a bit of time
digress.
to discuss more of that. No, it's not a matter of digress. Mental health is so important in our world today, and I know not effectively investigated nor dealt with at the farm level. And so we need to make that change.
But I think it is really like up and coming. People are more willing to talk about it. And I'm hoping to not just, look within dairy farming families, but we're going to do a study with beef producers and hopefully go out to some other commodity groups as well.
Oh, great. No, I look forward to hearing about that. So well done on those initiatives. And so you talked earlier about the health of cows, the health and well-being of cows, and a lot of your research over the years has been working in that area, in particular looking at what I'd call the impact of stressors, whether it's lameness, overcrowding, feed delivery on production. So expand a bit on what you've discovered in your past research when you've looked at kind of these associated stressors or how they can be identified using precision technology.
To start with, I guess I should say most of my studies were on farms with robotic milking systems, but that doesn't mean at all that, those are just specific to robotic herds, right? Like a lot of the factors that go into, making cows lame, they're the same whether you have a robot or not. But I guess in terms of, the effects of lameness, as an example, on production, that was measured by the robot. Cows visit the robot. So maybe some of those are specific to a robot. Anyways, so what I can tell you is, that's such a typical scientific answer, eh? I can tell you that obviously a lame cow will produce less milk, once she's lame, even though she might be a higher producer. But it's not just severe lameness that is, really obvious limp, the things that got picked up on those animal care assessments. Even cows that have a moderate limp, who are like a 3 out of 5 in the moderate category for our ProAction assessments, even they have reduced milk production by like 1.6 kilos per day. Minimal limps are going to impact lameness cow by cow. And then also I've surveyed 41 herds and looked at associations between milk production for the whole herd and those farms that had, a greater percentage of lame cows or more cows on each farm were lame. At a herd level, whether it's measured per cow or per robot, they were also producing less milk. So I'm not saying it's cause and effect, but having more lame cows also reduces how much you're producing at a herd level.
And you mentioned earlier that it's not necessarily associated with robotics, but I think maybe one of the beauty of having robotics is the data that it can generate for you as a researcher and at the farm level as well. And because it's voluntary milking, the cow needs to arrive there. And we know with lameness that that's perhaps less likely to happen. If she's lame, she's just not going to visit as much.
The amount of cows who were severely lame was really tiny. So I don't know if it's, robot farmers are doing a great job or the robot helps you pick that up. But really the most of the cows that were lame were moderately lame. They weren't severely lame.
Yep. And I hopefully, and I'm pretty certain we're doing a better job in the industry of reducing severe lameness.
Absolutely.
It's good to know that. I mean, 4 pounds lost milk just on moderately lame cows is pretty significant. It reminds us to pay more attention to it. And again, some of that information, I think, and you've published on this, and the ability to use precision technology to improve health and production by picking up these diseases a little earlier?
The rumination collars that people often have, or cows have, what's unique about that is the rumination can actually pick up a cow kind of going off feed a lot earlier than if you're just looking at her milk production, right? And it's not rocket science. A lot of people have been looking at using rumination behavior as an early indicator because she has to kind of go off feed and stop eating as much before her milk is going to drop.
Yeah.
So through a few studies, I've found that if you were to just look at all the cows on average before they get sick, kind of in the days leading up before they start to go downhill, you can see the rumination drops at least a day before their milk production. And same with some mastitis algorithms that we've made. The prediction models perform so much better when you include the behavior, so rumination or activity in that case.
Okay.
So it's really important to look at behavior and not just production if you're trying to, use precision technology to intervene sooner and, maybe treat a cow more preventatively as opposed to once it's maybe, too late kind of thing.
So can you expand a bit on that? So rumination is certainly effective to pick some of these cows out, but does that data need to be strengthened as well, along with some activity monitoring combined with the rumination, or are some of these systems coming up with kind of their own algorithms that have a scoring assessment of telling you a healthy cow?
There are different activity monitors out there, so I can't say for sure. Like the ones on the legs that are more of a pedometer, I think those might be better for looking at health status and heat status. Whereas I think the neck collars, in my experience, they kind of show certain illnesses, but they don't really show lameness. But they certainly do work for heats. And I think it's because they're just looking at like the upward motion of the head as opposed to like overall activity.
Yeah. So combining two things together does make it stronger data set or data indicators.
Yeah, I think.
Can we just rely on rumination by itself?
I mean, I think it's like a priority variable to look at, but I don't think anything alone is going to give you all the answers. So you got to look at like barn temperature. You've got to look at, for me, not just looking at within the cow, what do you expect her to do based on if she's a first calf heifer or an older cow? Do you expect her lactation curve and therefore her rumination curve to look like this? So like within herself, what do you expect? But then compared to her healthy herd mates, what's her potential?
Okay.
All that stuff. Yeah.
No, that makes it perfectly good sense. So thank you. So just as we kind of wind up, maybe some take-home messages for the audience of what you feel or what you know that the negative impacts and how of stressors and how precision technology can help you monitor these and pick them up in the dairy cow.
So my first take-home message would be whether it's lameness or even ketosis or maybe mastitis, just because it's not severe doesn't mean it doesn't have negative effects on cows and isn't worth managing in terms of prevention or treating it. So whether it's subclinical ketosis, moderate lameness, it's definitely worth doing something about it. And my second take-home message is that I think it's really good to look at multiple sources of information. So, have rumination in there if you can, or activity, and look at that with production and like a holistic picture of the barn to see how cows are doing. In order to make those decisions that they need to make. Yeah, and I think producers do that already. It would just be great if our algorithms could help us with that and not just, overload us with information.
Well, I'm sure they'll get stronger and stronger and much easier to use.
I think so too. Right? Yeah.
Thank you, Dr. King, for joining us on Rumination.
Thank you for having me today. I really enjoyed it.
Well, it was a pleasure as ours, so thank you. And I surely want to thank our audience for listening to us. And so that you don't miss our next episode of Rumination Podcast, you can find us at jefo.ca, on Google and Apple Podcasts, as well as Spotify. This podcast was brought to you by Jefo Nutrition Inc., precision nutrition for a growing world.